I've got a couple things that I've got to share with y'all on this segment of the Gig Geezer, so stay tuned. This week's I'm Speaking is going to be with you. It's going to be a free game session, another free game session. I will tell you up front that I made no effort at trying to book anybody for for this week's I'm Speaking. I'm working on booking someone for the upcoming I'm Speakings, but this week is going to be with you. So if you want to call, if you want to chime in and talk with me directly, the live stream, the link will be there. And so that's Wednesday, March 26, 2025, this Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern, and I'll look for you in this week's conversation. If this is your first time checking out the Gig Geezer, if you're a returning visitor of the Gig Geezer, thanks for coming by. And if you would not mind, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome comments in the section below. Today is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. I'm actually in a town called Clinton, South Carolina, which is the home to Presbyterian College, and their nickname is the Blue Hose. I'm here in Clinton because I'm actually stopping to get something to eat, which is something I normally don't do when I'm out here doing my delivery and transport opportunities. But sometimes you have to, especially when you take certain medications, and it's advisable that you do have something to eat with certain medications. Well, anyway, I said that I had some things that I want to share, and it's really under the theme of options and diversifying of opportunities. Things that I've talked about rather consistently since 2023, or even more specifically since December 2022, when I put out there that my next move was a Sprinter/cargo van, and that I was giving myself greater earnings opportunity and basically a much needed option to further give myself earning opportunities. Simple as that. And so now I'm back here to talk about options again. And the reason why I'm talking about it is because, well, obviously I'm doing something out of the van, and if I were to be honest, I've kind of been quiet about the van, because really and truly the van had not been running since December 10th, 2023. In fact, when I did this segment of the Gig Geezer, the run to Dallas, I was supposed to use a van, but I was able to, very fortunately, use my F-150 to complete that opportunity. And what had happened was, I got the opportunity. I'm about to head out the Geezer compound, start up the van, and it started really rough. And I knew that there was an issue that had loomed somewhat conspicuously with the van for a few months. And if I were to go back in time, I mentioned last spring about having replaced a control arm, and then I had the front end, the suspension parts replaced, the struts and the ball joints, and the front brakes had to be replaced along with that. And then towards the end of the summer, I had a very persistent issue with the big rubbing sound that I'd hear from the right side of the van. And I'm thinking that well, I had the wheel bearing replaced back in 2023, and sometimes it's just been my ownership experience. When you hear a noise on one side, the problem could be on the other side. And so ultimately what I ended up doing was replacing the left front wheel bearing. I replaced that, and I still had a problem. And I'm like, it can't be that the wheel bearing that was replaced famously in this segment of the Gig Geezer The right front wheel bearing needed to be replaced again, and damn if it didn't. Didn't have the son of a bitch a year and had to replace it. So now I got new wheel bearings, and the noise no longer existed, or at least most of it. But I also noticed something else, and that was the rotors. The rotors are worn pretty significantly, to say the least. And so in one fell swoop, what I did was last year on the van was replace front end wheel bearings, front brakes, and rotors. And now the van, at least based on the front end and suspension wise, has run its best throughout in my entire time of ownership. So now we move forward, and hopefully I'm not losing y'all, because you'll understand what I'm talking about giving yourself options and all this stuff, because this all plays into it. So bear with me. You're gonna have to look at this one to the end. And by the way, if you like the content that's been provided in this segment, the Gig Geezer, or in any other segment, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. So I had my eye on expanding my delivery and transport operations, and I may have mentioned about a box truck. And so in October, in the midst of being in a very bad, what I felt was a very bad run of business opportunities and all, or just earnings, an opportunity presented itself that it was too good to pass up on. And in middle October, I purchased a box truck. Purchased a box truck with eyes of giving myself yet another realm of options. That's right. And because of the ownership of that box truck, it really paid itself off about a month or so later in terms of newer opportunities, newer earnings opportunities. And so while it did not show money-wise in November, it definitely paid off in December. When things are slowing down, I was amping up with opportunities, and I had my second most productive month to that point, largely in part because of the box truck, because of the opportunities that were opened up to me. Now, I mentioned about that Dallas opportunity with the van. Well, that morning, the hard starting, and so I thought that maybe a fuel injector had gone bad because of old school thinking of vehicles. I thought a fuel injector gone bad, replaced the fuel injector. And in the process of replacing the fuel injector, I noticed on the number 4 fuel injector was what I replaced. And if you're looking into the van, like facing it, if you use your left hand as the left port and your right hand as the right port, the left port are cylinders 1 through 3, the right port are cylinders 4 through 6. And so the number 4 cylinder had been a problem dating back to the spring when I first noticed a engine light come on. And I was thinking, and because of the van kind of sputtering when I went up, it was kind of sputtering when it go up hills, but then it would clear up going downhill and on straight. In fact, the engine light would go off on straight and down hills. I'm thinking that, okay, what I need to do is replace the spark plugs, which I did. So I replaced spark plugs, but I noticed that the engine light would still come on periodically. In fact, it got to a point where it was coming on even with much frequent intervals. But it was still drivable, even though I noticed the sputtering had become more prevalent. It was still a drivable condition until I got to a point where I felt that I just absolutely positively had to do something. But the morning of that Dallas run, had I not had the F-150 and had not things worked for me, I would have missed out on $2,750. Now, for me, that was an option that I had. If I didn't have an option with that F-150, I would not have had that. That would not have been money earned for me. So with the van down, again, I replaced. So we move forward. I replaced the fuel injector, which cost me like $60. I've replaced fuel injectors before, but in the process of taking off the fuel rail, which connects to the fuel line and all, I had to take out another injector. For some reason, it pulled on another injector, and I noticed that in the process, it took an O-ring with it. And so what I ended up doing was taking the O-ring off of the injector that I replaced and put it on that injector, the number 5 injector, which is the one next to the number 4 injector. And I'm thinking everything is fine, but when I tried to start the van, I smelled gas, and I saw a puddle of gas up on the top part of the engine, and I'm like, well, maybe what's going on here? And so I went back in, replaced everything. At least what I did was I took it apart, put it back together, thinking that I did it correctly, and the van would not start. It just would not start, and I'm wondering what is wrong. In the process, when you hold the ignition, you go, what ended up happening, it pulled on the battery, but I'm thinking that it killed the battery. Come to find out, the battery was already on its last leg. And so I had the van since December 2022, never had any issues with starting the van. And so come to find out, needed a new battery. When it was tested, it was already not cranking. It was already not cold cranking as it should. It was not producing the amps that it should on a cold crank. So replaced that, tried to start up, it still wasn't doing anything. It just, and I'm thinking, now what else? Remember, I'm thinking the light is still on. When I run the diagnostic, it was telling me number 4 cylinder. But I also thought with the codes that there could be something else, and after some other research, I'm thinking that, well, maybe it could be a crankshaft position sensor, which could cause problems. It's a $60 part, but the issue is with accessing it. And where I was, I could not access it because the van was parked on the grass in front of the Geezer compound. And so basically the van sat from December until this week. But meanwhile, I'm making money because I created another option for myself with my box truck. That's right. In fact, what I mentioned about what I mentioned in a Gig Geezer segment, where there was a day in which there wasn't much going on and I went out beating the pavement. In fact, with the flyers that I put out, I showed my equipment. Well, I had a picture of my F-150, my van, and the box truck. That's right. And in the cash game, I've used all 3 vehicles in the cash game. At least my first cash game opportunity, I used the van, but then subsequent opportunities I've used the box truck because that's what I needed to use. Meanwhile, the box truck gave me options mainly with low board based brokered expediting opportunities. And so that's how I was. And then if there were any gig app based opportunities, I was very selective with the ones I went after, and I used the F-150. Well, today is a delivery opportunity that required the van, and I was able to use the van. And I'm telling you, man, it was a good feeling. It's been a good feeling today to sit in this van. You don't know what you miss. You don't know you don't really appreciate what you have until you don't have it, or you don't have use of it, don't have accessibility of it, or tangibility of it. Whichever way you want to use it. Talk about a relationship. You don't know what you got until you don't have it no more. That's what happened with this van. And I'd often talk about the van being a versatile vehicle, but yes, in what I do in my business operations at this juncture, the van is the most versatile of the 3 pieces of equipment that I have. Now you hear me referring to vehicles as equipment, because that's what it is, really, equipment. That's right. But you hear it start up. Man, that's a good sound. It wasn't doing that. It wasn't doing that for a while. It was not doing that. And basically, with the van being on the sidelines, yeah, I'm sweating bullets. I'm sweating bullets because the reason being, well, the box truck was more than serviceable. My biggest expense with the box truck is gas. This van gets twice as much gas mileage It's twice as better gas mileage as the box truck, which gives me versatility. And while the F-150 gives me slightly better gas mileage than the van, the F-150 cannot haul as much stuff as, at least based on how I got things set up. I don't have a trailer, or I don't have a cargo trailer or a trailer attached to it. At the beginning of the year, at the beginning of 2024, that was an option that I was considering, was getting a trailer, either a cargo trailer or an actual trailer, like a 7x14 trailer, more like a 7x14 trailer, and attach and get a trailer hitch to the F-150, and that would put me in a position where I could do some things cash game wise. But I thought about box truck. And for the things that I wanted to do, a box truck would more than suffice. In fact, a box truck would give me more options. In fact, a box truck does give me more options than if I were to get a longer bodied, higher roof van. There's nothing wrong with having a longer body, higher roof van, something that I've mentioned before. In fact, if I were not thinking box truck, that would be the next move, getting the longer body, higher roof van. But for what I'm doing at this time, the type of business that I'm going after, the box truck more than meets the need. Now, I will say this. You know what? From this point forward, what I'm thinking of doing is not really discussing how much money I earn on each opportunity. I will document some of the delivery opportunities from the equipment that I'm using, be it the F-150 or the van or from the box truck. But I'm going to have to think some things through, and what I hope is to be wise with what I'm doing, but also at the same time be the type of person who at least still documents my ownership experience, still documents my business experience, and possibly in the process may inform and educate people on going about doing business. Now, I'm going to answer a couple of questions at this point. One of the questions was from Shadowcross7248, and he asked, well, what is it a good time to get into the cargo van business? I'm going to answer this by saying I'm not going to answer cargo van business, because I've mentioned in multiple Gig Geezer segments, I don't use that term anymore. My question to you, Shadowcross7248, is what do you want to do with your van? What is it that you want to do with your van? What you do with your van will be your business. And it's not unless you're thinking that delivery and transport, doing low board based opportunities, be it over the road and trying to work the gig apps as cargo van business, that's not the fucking cargo van business. It is not, man. You're just doing delivery and transport. You're using your van to deliver shit. You're using your van to transport shit, if that's what you're thinking about. But if you're thinking of doing something else with your van, that is your business. Now, the other question comes from someone who answered a recent Gig Geezer segment where he asked me, well, he wants to use his van under an MC number. Can he then, at some point, then add a box truck and use that, I suppose, under an MC number? I'm going to answer your question is yes. You can use both your van and your box truck under the same MC number. The MC number is nothing more than your authority to transport goods and items across state lines, or your US DOT number is used to transport goods and items within state lines. And the vehicles that you're using, what ends up happening is that the vehicles that you use, you may have to declare them on your MCS 150 form. There's going to be a space for, in your case, straight box truck. You're going to mark a 1 there, and then number of vehicles that are non-commercial vehicles, which would be your van, you'll mark a 1 in that space as well. In fact, I may have gone over that in a recent Get Geezer segment, or in a recent free game segment, about certain things that you have to look out for with your that MCS 150 form. Now, I would be remiss if I failed to complete detail. I would be remiss if I failed to detail exactly what was wrong with the van. And so I'm coming back to this before moving forward. Now, I had the van towed to a mechanic who has done work on other vehicles that I've had in my ownership experience. And I know that this guy, he if you give him some symptoms, or if he sits in your car and listens to it, he's pretty much dead on with what's actually wrong. And so, in my case, as you see here on the inset, I had the van towed to the mechanic. That was Sunday evening. That was Sunday, March 23rd, 2025. Yesterday, March 24th, 2025. Yesterday afternoon, he calls me up and informs me of the massive fuel leak that I had, which is why I explained all the, which I explained about the issue with the injectors and all. And I said, it sounds like I didn't put things back together. He's like, man, it sounds like it. We'll see what else is up with it. And come to find out, the O-ring on the number 5 injector was deficient. And so he had to replace the entire injector. When the O-ring goes bad, you have to replace the injector. You can't just rig something up, which is what I tried to do. And that's why there was no sealing of where the injectors sit into the spot. There was no sealing. That's what the O-ring is for, to create a seal for it to sit in there correctly, and also keep gas from going all over the place. But so I created some work for myself. The actual issue with the engine light being on was, yes, it was the number 4 cylinder. That engine light had prompted me to change spark plugs as well, which I had failed to mention to this point. I changed spark plugs about almost 20,000 miles ago, and that was last spring. And in the process of changing spark plugs, I had to replace a coil, an ignition coil, and come to find out, what the guy told me was that the ignition coil on the number 4 cylinder, the one that I had been thinking about all this other shit wrong with it, that was the problem. And so he had to replace that, and the coil was like $60 as well. And so all together, he charged me for labor and diagnostic $504. To me, that is the best $500 I've ever paid anyone to work on a vehicle of mine. That's all I have to share for this segment of the Get Geezer. Hopefully you got something out of it. The main thing is, what options do you create yourself? What are the options that you're creating for yourself? Is it other facets of delivery and transport? I've often said many a times about mine or gig food delivery apps, specifically like the DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, and then there's the catering delivery apps, then there's the last mile gig delivery apps, then there's the load board base opportunities / brokered opportunities / expediting opportunities, and then there's a cash game opportunity that I use. Now, within and then to facilitate that, I've got 3 pieces of equipment: F-150, van, and a box truck. So those are my options that I've created for myself. The question is, what options will you create for yourself if you plan to move forward with your business enterprise? And so with that, again, if you like the content that's been provided in this segment or in any other segment, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm Inwood Lane. As always, may your grind and may your hustle continue.